what happens when you combine this dweeb with this idiot and this Russian asset, along with a couple of morons to boot? Well, you get the biggest national security scandal in decades. That's what you get. And now their screw up is before a judge in a civil suit, and this judge ain't messing around. He's already issuing orders. I'm going to
is accused here of not only obviously violating the law, full stop, saying I have wartime powers when there's no war, but then furthermore, allegations and evidence that he would abuse power and try to intimidate that judge, pushing for the impeachment, which is usually reserved, of course, for bribery or misconduct, nothing like this. But that might be a ploy to put pressure on judges or to oust.
Donald Trump is facing a major legal setback, and this time, there's no escaping it. The Supreme Court just handed down a ruling so significant that not even his usual all-cap social media rants can change the narrative. Chief Justice John Roberts, whom Trump once believed to be an ally, made it crystal clear, no one, not even a former president, is above the law. In a rare and direct response to Trump's attacks on the judiciary, Roberts pushed back, sending a strong message about the integrity of the courts. Washington is buzzing, Trump is furious, and his hold on power is looking shakier than ever.
John Roberts, in a very rare public statement, is saying that impeaching judges over legal rulings that you don't like isn't how it works. It's not how the American judiciary is organized. This is in response to Donald Trump's completely whacked out Truth Central rant, saying that the judge who recently ruled against him with regard to the deportations should be impeached because Trump does not like the ruling. What Chief Justice John Roberts said is that, quote, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision.
I just finished watching the Supreme Court. It's a beautiful thing to watch in many respects. It's unfortunate that we have to go through a thing like that. I consider it to be more election interference by the Democrats. That's what they're doing. In watching the Supreme Court today, I thought it's very.
Donald Trump is once again lashing out, this time calling for a judge's impeachment simply because he didn't like a recent court ruling on deportations. But Chief Justice John Roberts isn't having it. In a rare public statement, Roberts shut down Trump's argument, reminding everyone that judges can't be removed just because someone disagrees with their legal decisions. He stated firmly, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court just issued a game-changing ruling that has legal experts stunned and late-night comedians celebrating. In a decision led by Chief Justice Roberts and the conservative majority, the court declared that presidents have absolute immunity for official actions taken while in office. In other words, if a president does something and labels it official, they're essentially untouchable. This ruling dramatically expands presidential power, essentially turning the White House into a space where rules and consequences barely apply. Critics argue it's a dangerous precedent, while Trump and his supporters see it as a huge victory. Either way, it's a decision that will shape American politics for years to come.
The Supreme Court all along. See, these district judges, and I liken it to, I don't know, you're driving a car with 5 people and everybody's trying to grab the steering wheel. So it's you and 4 other people. And you got all these people trying to grab the steering wheel. How are you going to drive the car? It's the same thing with running the government. You got all these district judges trying to get their hands on the wheel, trying to stop the president. And you now have the Republican Congress trying to start legislation that would thwart this, not just for President Donald Trump, but for any future president, Democrat.
Justice Sonia Sotomayor didn't hold back in her dissent, warning that this ruling opens the door to a terrifying future where presidents could order assassinations, grant themselves pardons, or even steal public funds, without consequences. In short, the Supreme Court has just thrown open Pandora's box, but instead of mythical curses, it's overflowing with corruption and unchecked power. President Joe Biden also sounded the alarm, calling the decision a dangerous precedent. With this ruling, he fears a future where a rogue president could push the limits even further, perhaps even declaring themselves supreme overlord of the United States. The stakes for democracy have never been higher.
Trump's legal battles are escalating. The clash over those controversial deportation flights may be headed to the Supreme Court. Trump has asked the justices to greenlight deportations under the Wartime Alien Enemies Act. We'll have more on that later this hour. But first, two more law firms are fighting back against the president in his legal vengeance tour. Jenner and Block and Wilmer Hale are suing to stop executive orders aimed at hindering their ability.
Trump, on the other hand, is reportedly thrilled, already brainstorming new official acts he could take advantage of. Who knows? Maybe replacing the Lincoln Memorial with a giant golden statue of himself giving a thumbs up is next on the list. Meanwhile, legal experts are scrambling to unpack the ruling's implications. Some worry it paves the way for an imperial presidency, where a commander-in-chief can do whatever they want as long as they vaguely mention national security. Others are struggling to figure out where the line is between official and personal actions. For example, if a president hosts world leaders at their private golf course, is that diplomacy, or just an expensive way to squeeze in a few rounds? One thing's for sure, this decision has left the country with more questions than answers.
Trump's incompetent and hopelessly corrupt Attorney General, yes woman Pam Bondi, has already indicated she's not going to pursue criminal charges despite criminal behavior. And of course it's criminal behavior. Not only was the former Fox News host texting.
In the wake of this ruling, prosecutors handling Trump's many legal battles, including cases related to election interference and the January 6th attack, are now scrambling to figure out what charges, if any, are still on the table. It's like the Supreme Court just handed Trump a legal get-out-of-jail-free card, leaving everyone else trying to make sense of a decision that feels bizarre, frustrating, and almost impossible to interpret. One thing is certain, this ruling has completely shaken up the balance of power in America. The justice system now faces a massive question: should the scales of justice come with a fine print disclaimer? The consequences of this decision will ripple through government, courtrooms, and, perhaps most consistently, late-night comedy shows for years to come.
I'm asking the Supreme Court to overturn Judge Boasberg's ruling blocking him from deporting migrants under the Wartime Alien Enemies Act from the 17th century. But how strong is Trump's case here?
Well, I think it's a pretty strong case for two reasons. First of all, as noted a moment ago, there are general powers to remove individuals who have been in the United States without legal status that present a danger to the national security of individuals that live in the United States. So I don't even think you need to necessarily get to that.
After losing the 2020 election, Donald Trump did exactly what everyone expected. He refused to concede. But instead of going quietly, he went all in, complaining about voter fraud with the determination of a man trying to return a half-eaten steak at a diner. He unleashed his so-called legal dream team, a group that looked less like experienced attorneys and more like contestants on America's Worst Lawyers. They filed over 60 lawsuits challenging the election results, only to rack up a losing streak so bad it made the Washington Generals look like champions. But Trump wasn't about to let reality get in his way. When the courts rejected his claims, he allegedly tried pressuring the Department of Justice to support his false narrative, because, in his world, repeating a lie enough times somehow makes it true. Enter special counsel Jack Smith, a prosecutor who has been on Trump's trail with the intensity of a caffeine-fueled bloodhound. He charged Trump for his efforts to overturn the election, and Trump's defense? Absolute presidential immunity. Now, thanks to the Supreme Court's latest ruling, that argument might actually hold up.
Hearings on two fronts. One, should the temporary restraining order be converted into a preliminary injunction? Those things are kind of kissing cousins to one another, but a preliminary injunction can stay in place much longer. Indeed, it can stay in place during the entire litigation of this lawsuit, which could take months, it could take a year or more, and it would be a more permanent freeze, so the administration would not be able to restart these.
The Supreme Court took up Trump's case, probably after a collective sigh and a few stress-induced migraines. Their ruling? Presidents have absolute immunity for official acts, but not for unofficial ones. So, pardoning a Thanksgiving turkey? No problem. Trying to overthrow democracy? Not so much now. The political world is on edge, wondering what this means for the future. Will future presidents push the limits? Could we be looking at a world where National Taco Tuesday becomes law? No one knows for sure, but one thing is certain, this is a legal roller coaster with no brakes, and we're all just holding on. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, however, wasn't having it. Her dissent read like a full-on mic drop, warning that this ruling puts the presidency on a fast track to unchecked power. She practically begged America to wake up, pointing out that if a president can dodge prosecution just by calling something official business, then congratulations, we've just unlocked monarch mode. Someone get the guy a crown.
all the way to the Supreme Court to take this case and to smack down these district judges, particularly over the enforcement of the Alien Enemies Act, but it could actually go further than that if a broad decision is reached here by the court. This could be a monumental case for the Trump administration.
The backlash was immediate and explosive. Legal experts are eyeing this ruling the way you'd look at a suspiciously cheap used car, warning that it sets an incredibly dangerous precedent. Future presidents might start pushing the limits, testing just how official their most unofficial acts can be. Meanwhile, Trump supporters are celebrating like he just won another season of The Apprentice, claiming this decision protects the sacred institution of the presidency. Because, apparently, what America really needed was more legal cover for powerful leaders. Now, the country is left with some huge questions. Can a sitting president order a crime in broad daylight and just call it governing? If history has taught us anything, it's that politicians love loopholes, and this one? This is the legal equivalent of the Grand Canyon, and just like that, the Supreme Court has dropped a live legal grenade into the middle of American democracy. Buckle up, this fight is far from over.
Or the kind of person who goes out of his way to criticize Trump. Trump told him a few months ago, thank you, or that was a few weeks ago. He randomly said, thank you. He's always been pretty Trump-aligned. So that's how you know this is serious when he comes out on the same day and is like, yo, you have to chill out. Even this headline says, John Roberts blasts Trump in...
The ruling wasn't even dry before the reactions started flying. President Joe Biden wasted no time slamming the decision, like a guy whose credit card just got declined again. With the urgency of someone watching history take a dangerous turn, Biden warned that this ruling doesn't just shield Trump, it hands every future president a free pass to go full-on supervillain. His message? If Trump gets back in office, don't be surprised if official acts suddenly include canceling elections, nationalizing Mar-a-Lago, and renaming the country Trumpistan. Meanwhile, Trump is celebrating like he just won a lifetime supply of McDonald's fries, calling the ruling a huge victory for the Constitution and democracy, which is, let's be honest, pretty ironic given the circumstances.
News from Georgia, which to some is considered the battleground state of all battleground states, and it's a blow to Donald Trump and Republicans who have been scheming for election interference there. I will share the bad news for Trump that comes from the highest court in Georgia with you shortly, but first I've compiled the most important and up-to-date news from the Peach State that I could find, so you'll be an armchair expert on the Georgia election by the time the bombshell is dropped in